Hello and welcome. Well, in 2012, I interviewed Dave Wellstone, and I'm really pleased that he is back with me, 2024. In fact, he's back with me on what feels like a momentous night to, I think, most of us in our country tonight. This is November 4th. Tomorrow is our election, something we've all been thinking a lot about. All of us have been worrying about it in different ways. And so having someone from the political world and someone with the history he does with the legacy of his parents, Paul and Sheila, just feels kind of fitting for me tonight. So I want to welcome you, Dave. It's great to see you back. Goodness sakes.
Great to be here. Thank you.
12 years ago. Time goes fast.
Sure does.
But thinking of time, I'm wondering how you're doing in terms of, this is also right around the time your parents died in the plane crash with your sister and other staff. And I can so vividly remember how awful it was for all of us. And I can't, quite imagine how you've gotten over it, but how are you doing in that regard, getting through all the shock and intense grieving?
Yeah, well, appreciate you asking. I mean, I always say to people, as the anniversary comes, it's when most people remember. I remember more often, right, on a more daily basis. And so I'm doing well. I'm doing well, trying to help carry on some of the work that both of my folks did. And so in the work that I do on mental health and addiction, every day I'm reminded of both of them, do some work in the human trafficking as well with the tech tool that we have. So, I just decided people always ask, how do you go on? And I say, well, you do, right? That's what you do. You go on, you try to make a difference and try to, use the gifts you were given and make the best of them.
And the energy you were given, or the momentum from all the hard work your folks both did. His mother, if you are new to Minnesota or you're too young to remember, was a dynamite advocate for domestic violence for women. And I got to interview her years ago in the 80s. So I mean, not only your father do we think about as an inspiration for you, but your mother, Sheila, too.
Well, they called my mom the second senator, and she had an office right outside my dad's. And you're right, domestic violence, human trafficking. She was
on it. I mean,
she was a leader.
On it early, wasn't she?
Yep, she was a true leader. And so yes, it was the two of them were powerhouses. Most people remember my father more, but I just got done doing an interview where I said I don't think he would have been who he was, or maybe even the senator, had it not been for her.
No, I bet not. I mean, from what I remember reading and hearing, I mean, they were really a tight couple, a really close couple.
It was a love story at the end. That's for sure. As the relationships are like that, and I think at the end, neither of them wanted to be apart, and so that was a very touching thing.
And how old were they when they died?
Oh boy, so they would have been, I think they were in their late 50s, and so if I'm 59 now, they about 58, about the same age as me.
Right now.
Right now, yep.
I have to just do an aside here. He just told me he'll be 60, and I'm just kind of aghast, or not aghast, but I am kind of surprised in a big, big way. You just don't look or act like 60.
I feel about 18 in terms of emotionally. The body doesn't quite feel like that, but I've got a lot of energy still.
That's great.
And age is it's a number. You do not look your age, and we both are kind of hard charging at our ages, and so and my favorite coffee is Nespresso, so I always say the coffee tastes as good as George Clooney looks. And he's, whatever age he is, so.
He's another great example, isn't he, of aging. Well, you mentioned your tech organization, Pathfinder Solutions, but before you tell us what you're up to with that, Just give us a brief what you've been up to since 2012.
Yeah.
Because you've done some varied things and interesting.
Yeah, a lot of different stuff. Finished off the mental health parity bill that's named in my father's name, Paul Wellstone, Pete Domenici, Mental Health Addiction Equity Act, that civil rights bill for folks with mental health and addiction. That propelled me into doing sober housing. So long ago, back in another life, I was a housing developer, affordable housing, and so
really?
I put kind of the knowledge or the interest in housing together with this, and to do sober housing. So I started a women's sober housing company called Safe Haven. It started with one, then grew to 5 houses, then a step down apartment. These folks were in sober housing, then needed a step down spot, so I did that. And that is the impetus for starting this tech company, because while I would be visiting those houses, I would see these women come in and be on their phones and in need of a community, in need of resources. And I also knew that the folks that were serving them didn't really know what their rates of recovery were. And so wanted to build a tool that connected people to those that were serving them, and then also have some data around what is actually working. So we were, what could say this actually works because, and we work with a lot of the disproportionately affected communities. So a lot of tribal nations are my clients. And so what we do, which is a little different, is meeting people where they're at, not only in their recovery journey, but also culturally, language. So our tool, if we're dealing with Native Americans, will have native language, native cultures, East African community, the same kind of thing. For veterans, similar. So we really try to specialize like that.
In terms of accessing this information, is it designed, Dave, to be accessed by the people who are working with the Native Americans, for example, or for anybody who's Native American who wants to use it?
Well, and so it's actually for anybody, but we knew that Native Americans were dying at 10 times the rate of opioid overdoses, for instance. So I wanted to get it into those communities first, but we work with any and every community. And so to answer your question, it's a group will pay for it, like a treatment center may use it for their folks. They'll give a handheld app for somebody that's in recovery. They have a tool in their tool belt, and then it's connected to whoever's working with them, has a desktop version, so people can check in on their phone. They can set up habits that they follow.
Okay, so it's an app that plugs right into the phone of the user.
Yeah, it's a phone-based app,
Yeah.
and then it connects to whoever's working with you. So a counselor, a probation officer can see in real time what's going on, can help prioritize care,
Wow.
can talk, can
Wow.
asynchronously text with each other, can share resources with their clients. So it's got a lot of functionality. Work with largely Medicaid population, Native American population, communities of color, but we also work with some very large treatment centers.
I'm one of those people who is technologically a little weak, and is the average person able to use this in a way that it's not too overwhelming?
Well, I can use it, which means almost anybody could use it, to be quite honest. I'm a very in our company of about 20 people, I'm the CEO, but very low tech. Very
then
simple.
That's a good test,
Very
right?
simple.
If you can use it.
Yeah, and what was funny is we've got people as young as 13 using it, because we've given it to youth, especially on the tribal nations. And I've got people older than me using it. Very simple, very intuitive.
Okay.
But the real premise is this: connection is the opposite of addiction or dysfunction. So if you're connected,
That's a good.
most of the bad stuff happens when you're not connected. So if you're connected and you have the ability to reach out for help, you have a community at your fingertips, you have a tool at your fingertips when you need help, that's an important thing.
That's a great quote. We should have a banner, or you should have a banner made of that. Connection is, a tool for.
Yeah, it's the opposite. You know, I actually thought, Mary, that I had coined that term. That's how full of myself I am, until I heard that it had come up way before me. But it made such sense to me.
Say it again for the
Connection
viewers.
is the opposite of addiction,
Right.
or in this space, connection is the opposite of dysfunction, even if it's not addiction you're dealing with. So we work with a lot of justice-involved folks coming out of jails or prisons. Whatever that journey may be, being connected, you know, is generally a big part of that recovery journey from whatever it is.
And the statistic you threw out a minute ago, repeat that, because that was startling about the
Native
difference.
Americans?
Right.
Yes, well, the death rate in Minnesota for Native Americans is 10 times the rate of white folks
And that's
for opioid overdoses.
specific opiate.
For opioid overdoses. And in the East African community, it's about 7 times.
So I read the article, of course, in the Star Tribune that you and Ilhan Omar co-wrote, and it sounds like it's a really big problem for the Somalian people and others from East Africa.
Yeah, you know, well, stigma's huge, right? And so I think for a long time people didn't want to talk about it in the Somalian community, East African community, the Hmong community, Karen community as well, and frankly in any community, but particularly in those. Now people are starting to come out and really talk about it. But when you have this opioid epidemic, and so now people are dying. And so it's pretty stark. Now somebody is doing whatever they're doing, whether they know that they're having fentanyl, but if it's in these drugs, then they're dying. And so Ilhan really wants to work with her community and you know, her constituency in Minneapolis, right? She's got a lot of folks that need help, as do everybody. And so I had met her, and we had a real bond around working on this together.
Well, the tie-in between addiction and mental health is so important and so interesting. And do you, when you think about these two causes, which were your dad's big causes, do you see the causal, you know, kind of evolution of how this got so paired?
Well, I mean, here's what I do see for sure is that, you know, folks struggling with addiction or mental health, typically there's a lot of crossover, a ton of crossover, right? And so it's generally not just one or the other. And it feels to me like when that is the case, you've got to deal with both issues. Because oftentimes you may deal with the one and then the other rears its head. And so this kind of co-occurring and dealing with those co-occurring pieces. Again, it's one of the reasons we built this tool we built with the data around it to say, you know, it's not one size fits all. So if you've got a co-occurring, if you happen to be a veteran, if you happen to be a person of color, does that look different than, say, a family member of mine, right? A white family member. So we really are heavy into the data and looking at what actually works for different populations. And when I had heard and saw the statistic that you talked about, 10 times for Native Americans, we had to start there. And we just have to start where the pain is the worst, and where there's less resources. I mean, people like me, you know, might be able to help myself or family members, whereas some folks just don't have that ability, and so we're trying to really go there.
I mean, treatment can be expensive if you don't have the right kind of insurance, and most people probably don't.
Well, and if you think about it, you go into treatment and you come out, and then there's usually, you know, relapse or reoccurrence, and it's kind of a revolving door.
Statistically, that's also a high
Huge
for everybody, any kind of treatment, right?
So what I wanted is, as you leave your treatment center, I wanted a tool in your tool belt as you walked out the door to keep you connected. And if you needed to get back in, boom, you could talk to somebody, because that is one of the real problems. And then when you throw on top of that this opioid epidemic, now someone may die. So you have that moment when you say, I might need some help. You can get on your app and hit something, and it may save your life.
Was this your brainchild, or just in a nutshell, how did?
Yeah.
Because it's a unique, or kind of a first, isn't it, in terms of
I mean,
angle?
So it's unique in that we really try to fit the communities we work with. So languaging the languaging fits those communities because it's not one size fits all. The story is this. I was at the dog park in Northfield with my dog, and I saw this young fella with a baby and started talking. And he told me he worked for Google doing special projects, predictive gambling odds for the Final Four basketball.
Okay.
And I'm like, geez, you must just be brilliant. He said, I do a lot of this great work, and I make a lot of money for people, but I'm not real happy. I'm not fulfilled. He looked up who I was, and he saw, and I met him again at the dog park, and we started talking. I said, why don't you come, let's build a tool together that meets people where they're at and has an impact. And so that was sort of the genesis of getting this going. And that was, about 8 years ago. But now we've got hundreds of thousands of app opens, hundreds of thousands of habits created. We have a lot of data that this works. Worked with Alina Hospital with a big study. So we've gone from a hope and a dream and a prayer.
And a chance meeting. I mean, that's a great story of a beginning that wasn't a planned beginning, was it?
No, it's very, very organic.
You never know who you'll meet at the dog park, right? That's great. Speaking of important connections, Dave just told me he's flying out tomorrow morning to hang out with we hope, the next Vice President, Tim Walz, our governor. And so you guys met or got more connected in a camp that you were helping run for Wellstone Camp.
Well, I was the chair of the board and helped set up these camps. I didn't actually run the camp, but Tim, when he was a teacher, signed up for one of our Camp Wellstones and came through it. And Peggy Flanagan, the lieutenant governor, was his instructor at the camp.
Oh, so
she was the one who did the instruction.
Was in a leadership role then.
Yeah, and this was on how to run for office. I think in that same year we had Melvin Carter, the mayor of St. Paul, Mark Ritchie, who was the former Secretary of State, and Keith Ellison.
Yeah.
Right, and so. But yes,
what a class.
What a class. I've known Tim for a long time. I was one of his first supporters when he ran for governor when there was a bunch of Democrats in. Consider him a really good friend, so I've been there forever. So pretty honored to get to go out and be around at this time.
Yeah. It is such a momentous time. As I mentioned, we're taping on November 4th, 2024. And it truly does feel like this is the most important presidential election of my life and most of our lives, probably.
I think so.
Well, what would your mom and your dad say about the partisanship we've got in our country right now? It's feeling, like it's getting worse, not better. Would your folks have any
I think my dad
ideas for us?
I think if my dad was around, he was one of those people that could cut through that stuff, right? He was on the Iron Range, where they still love him, but it's Republican now. It's much changed. He could go into the cafes and out in rural Minnesota talk to farmers, and then he can go into the inner city, certainly talk with folks.
A man for all.
He had that ability. What he would say, I think, is the way he governed. Let's find what brings us together more than focusing on what separates us. So for him, mental health, addiction, who's going to oppose helping folks? Human trafficking. I mean, so he worked with Sam Brown back, the very conservative Republican from Kansas, on trafficking, Pete Domenici, the conservative Republican from New Mexico, on mental health parity. So he'd say, there's a lot of issues that bind us together, let's find them and work together. I think that's what he would have been doing.
So then in working together on some common issues, that does change everything. But didn't back in the day when your dad was in the Senate, didn't they fairly commonly get breakfast together with people of different ilk? And my dad always told me, I think it was different. He respected his colleagues even if they didn't ever vote the way he voted, but he respected that at least he knew
they were driven by something instead of just, testing the political wins and voting. So he became pretty close friends with a lot of Republicans who he was with regularly, just because there was, and they, with him, they didn't agree, but they would find an issue or two where there could be some common ground to really help people. Again, Sam Brownback, they agreed on almost nothing, but human trafficking they agreed on.
Okay.
So then they focused on that and went and did something good for people.
Yeah, for sure. Although it took a lot of work after the bill originally got through to get the insurers to kind of pony up more.
Well, they're still not. So
They're
I'm
not
back
where
involved.
they should be, are they?
It's, well, if you just saw in the paper, I mean, I saw a couple of our plans here got big fines for thumbing their nose at mental health parity, as it's known.
Yeah,
There's more enforcement. It's one thing that Ilhan talked about. Just passed a law for the enforcement. There were no teeth in the law. So we passed a law that said it's illegal to do this, but there was no. So now I think it's gone to the Department of Labor, who can now really levy some fines and have some
good.
enforcement. But the work just started. We need to crank it up. I'm kind of on fire again to get going on it.
Good.
'Cause
I can feel your on fireness. I mean, it feels like you are truly.
I'm, when you work in this space, you see enough pain. Certainly, I've seen it around friends, family, and everything. I'm pretty driven.
Yeah.
So I have like I said, I think a lot of people said, "What do you do, boy? If this happened to me, I don't know what I could do. If losing your family." And I have an opportunity. So if you take that opportunity and you go try to do good stuff, try not to mess up the great legacy that my dad put forth, which I try to not do. Then it's hard to not be driven because you can make a difference.
Yeah, that sounds so good. I remember the Chinese character for crisis is danger on one side and opportunity on the other. And if we're not at that point right now in our country, aren't we? I mean, we have that an opportunity. There are positives abroad and all over. We've got about 3 minutes left. Just give me your sort of scenario. Plan A, if Trump wins. Plan B, if Harris wins, in terms of how you, with your mission, go forward.
Yeah, so I think for me, with the mission and the company, it's we just do what we do. So when wake up,
No matter who's
and
in
whenever
charge.
it is, I mean, there's still going to be people dying. There's still plenty of pain. There's still people in need of help. There may be more people in need. Depending on what happens, it's, I certainly have my wishes, and I think that one outcome's one heck of a lot better than another. But with that said, what I'm going to have to do is just double down, no matter what. I personally think if my friend, the governor, is the vice president, and then I think there might be more opportunities to really push this narrative to help folks. But and if not, I'm still going to be working hard at it.
Well, and as a non-governmental program here, you've got that option to proceed as you have been, really, right?
Yeah, here's the wood. We try to impact lives and hope to make money. Most companies try to make a bunch of money and hope to impact lives. So we're going to keep doing what we do.
Keep the right
keep pressing.
goal on top, right?
Keep making a difference and hope, knock on wood, that we are, make money. We've been around 7 years. So
you've gotten through the rough years for a new business, haven't you?
A new tech startup is like 1 in 20. So we feel pretty.
I knew it.
We're
I knew
pretty
it was,
honored that we've made it this far, and I just have an amazing team. If you surround yourself with people a lot smarter and better than you, you usually succeed. That's what I've done.
Well, that's great. How do we get a hold of your team or you? What's the best way, Dave?
Yeah, so Pathfinder Solutions. Look us up online, and our website.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you can see what we
We'll
do.
put
and
that
we'd love to, and we're just always looking to try to impact lives. So talk to anybody who wants to talk.
Well, thank you for talking with me and the people who are watching.
You have a lovely show. Thanks for all you do, Mary.
You're welcome. It's great to have you back again, and maybe we won't wait 12 years, but maybe 5 or
Let's do it
3.
in the next 2.
Well,
Let's do it in
okay,
2 years
okay.
again.
Yes, okay. It's a plan.
It's a plan. That's great.
Okay. Been talking about addiction. We've been talking about parity. Been talking about Pathfinder Solutions and mental health. All big topics. We need to have a part 2 in 2 years. So thanks for joining us. I'll be back next week. See you then.